While rising carbon emissions and greenhouse gases are the major reason for climate crisis, there are three more reasons which are not given enough attention and are heavily contributing to the significant climate change. While scientists are underway working to reach the global 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold, the real test lies in our ability to cut Scope 3 emissions. Now let's get to know what Scope 3 emissions are. The term first appeared in the Greenhouse Gas Protocol of 2001, and today scopes are the basis for mandatory greenhouse gas reporting. In the United Kingdom, if you're hearing about Scope 1, 2 and 3 emissions for the first time, it's highly unlikely that it will be the last. Now, the term scope is divided into three categories of emissions. Scope 1 are the emissions that cover the GHG emissions that a company produces directly. For example, producing GHG gases while running boilers or vehicles. Emissions which are produced indirectly, like while producing electricity or energy it buys for heating and cooling buildings, are Scope 2 emissions. And lastly, the most tricky ones are Scope 3 emissions. Now, these emissions are not only associated with the company itself, but also the organization which is directly responsible for the ups and downs in their value chain. Taking, for instance, company buying external products from its suppliers and from its products when customers use them. Out of all the three emissions, Scope 3 is nearly always the big one. While our goal is to reduce GHG emissions per consumer use of our products by 2030, the United Nations, in turn, also warns that the world's GHG emissions are still set to be 10% higher in 2030 in comparison to 2010. While Scope 1 and 2 are mostly within the organization's control, what dominates the most are Scope 3 emissions, which are directly accountable for more than 70% of a business's carbon footprint. Unfortunately, because they contribute the most, these aren't generally reported on environmental, social and governance reports, because of which it is creating difficulties to reach the desired climate target. Committing to reach net zero while tackling the Scope 3 emissions, several companies are now addressing the issue and are also contributing to map emissions footprint by scale. Although for many companies, most of their GHG emissions and cost reduction opportunities lie outside their own operations. In such an environment of co-creation, businesses are now planning to work together to identify improvements in supply chain management, cost reductions, new and innovative products and services. This then helps consumers to distinguish genuine industry visionaries and disruptors from the broader industry pack. As we do not have a lot of time in our hands, many major industry players have already started to make serious decisions around how they will pivot to deal with and benefit from Scope 3 emissions planning, because the strategic planning process will be the key to assess where a business sits relative to its peers and how innovators can move quickly to take the lead and prosper from the seismic shift in emissions control. WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.